25th Hour Radio Show. You're tuned in to the 25th Hour Radio Show. I'm your host, Rob Fairless, and on behalf of my co-host, Randy Ashby, we would like to welcome you to today's program. Today on the show, we have comic strip legend Mort Walker, the creator of Beetle Bailey. How you doing, Mort?
I'm doing fine.
Hey, when did you first get the idea for doing Beetle Bailey?
Well, all my life I wanted to be a cartoonist. My father used to tell me when I was 4 years old, run out and get the paper, Mort, and I'd go and get the paper and bring him back and get in bed with him, and he'd put his arm around me and he'd read the comics, and he'd start to laugh, and tears would come down his cheeks, and I'd just look up at him and I'd say, boy, isn't that the great thing to do for somebody, to make them so happy? And I started drawing cartoons, and first of all, I had to learn how to read so I could read them when he was at work. And the girl next door wanted to be a teacher, so I said, teach me to read. So she did. And by the time I was 5 and 6, I was checking 5 books out of the library every week. I was reading history books and all kinds of stuff, But then I began drawing my own comic strips. I had my own comic strip in the Kansas City paper when I was 9 years old. It was called The Lime Juicers. It was about British sailors and traveling all over the world, getting in with cannibals and animals and whales and all kinds of things. So that appeared once a week in the Kansas City paper on a Saturday. Then I found out I could sell cartoons, and so I dropped out of school, and they couldn't get me to go back because I said, I'm making money.
Well, Mort, what was your first paying cartoon?
I don't remember which one it was, but it was. What I remember is there was a guy standing out in the rain, and he was standing in front of a bar. He says, "Shall I stand out here and get? Wait a minute. Shall I stand out here and get wet, or go inside and get soaked?"
Yeah. Now you were actually affiliated with Hallmark at one time, weren't you?
You experimented with what?
With Hallmark.
What art?
Hallmark. Hallmark cards.
Hallmark cards, yeah. Well, I was working I just started college. I was in the Kansas City Junior College. And I needed money because we couldn't even afford the $25 tuition. So I got a job at Hallmark in the shipping department. And I was down there packaging and shipping out the cards, and I heard that they needed an artist, so I went upstairs and took them some of my drawings. And they said, well, how do you like our cards? I said, they stink. They said, what? I said, well, you don't have anything for men. They said, oh, Connie, sure we do. See those little fuzzy pears? If it has on a pink ribbon, it's for women. And if it has on a blue ribbon, it's for men. And I said, I wouldn't send one to my grandmother. And they said, well, let's see your drawings. And they looked at my drawings and they said, okay, you're hired. And so I was the top artist for Hallmark. I met every morning with the writers. I worked in the writing department where they wrote the verses. And I changed the whole complex of the greeting card business because I was drawing cartoons and they were funny cards, whereas before that, all their cards were real pretty cards, flowers and scenes and stuff like that. And I was doing gags and joke cards, things like that. Usually, you only saw those cards on slam birthday cards or slam Valentine cards. So all of a sudden, everybody started doing funny cards. Mainly what they were after was the war had just started, and they knew that soldiers would run us on cards to people. And soldiers aren't going to send sweet little cards with teddy bears on them.
now was this was before Beetle? Was this before Beetle Bailey?
Oh yeah, this was back when I was 12, 13 years old.
Oh man. So how did Beetle come about? I mean, is
Well,
he based on a real person, or is he just image anybody, or just pulled out of the air, or?
well, I tried to do comic strips. I couldn't seem to work it out. So after I graduated from college, I came directly to New York, and I rented a condemned building, a room in a condemned building for $8 a month, and I tried to sell cartoons to magazines. And for 6 months, I didn't sell anything. And I thought, that's because I'm just a kid, and they don't know what my finished drawings will be. So these rough drawings in pencil, they probably are just looking down on them. So I started doing finished drawings for them, and by golly, it worked. Next thing I know, I was the best-selling cartoonist for magazines in the country. And the editor of the Saturday Evening Post, which was the big magazine at the time, said, you're drawing cartoons about married people and little kids, and you're not married, are you? And I said, no. You don't have any little kids? I said, no. He said, why don't you draw what you know about? He said, I used to see your cartoons when you were editor of the magazine at Missouri University. I used to see that magazine. You did real good cartoons about college. Why don't you do some college cartoons? So I started doing those, and he was buying them. One day he pointed at one of the characters in one of the cartoons that had his hat down over his eyes, and he said, hey, that's a funny-looking character. He said, why don't you feature him, star him, and maybe we'll buy it as a feature, run it on the postscripts page. So I said, okay. So I began, and I called him Spider. He was named after, I got all my characters after real people, because I thought that would help me give them a character. And so anyway, we had a guy in my fraternity house. He got drunk, and he was trying to get home. He was crawling up the front lawn to the house, and we all looked out and said, oh boy, he looks like a spider. So everybody called him Spider after that, so I took that name, and I started drawing Spider. And then when I got to be the top-selling magazine cartoonist in the country, I was just married at the time, and my new wife said, if you're the top seller and you only made $8,000 last year, you're in the wrong business. So I said, yeah, and I sat right down that evening and did a bunch of comic strips starring Spider. I took it to King Features the next day, and they bought it. So Beetle started out as a college cartoon, and but they had another character named Spider in another strip, so I just gave him the name of a different bug. I called it Beetle, and I named it after the editor of the Saturday Evening Post, John Bailey. I took his last name and gave it to Beetle Bailey. Well, anyway, it didn't sell very well, and at that time, only about 5% of the people in this country went to college, so it wasn't a universal subject, So the Korean War was heating up, and some of the editors said, well, they're drafting college kids. Maybe I ought to draft Beetle. And I resisted it because after World War II, most of the cartoonists went out of business that did Army cartoons. Nobody wanted to read about them anymore. So. But anyway, they finally persisted, and I put him in the Army. And boy, it just took off.
Boy, did it.
It sure did. And instead of having 25 papers, within a year or so, I had 10,000 papers. Well, no, not 10. What am I talking about? 1,000 papers.
Now, how many characters at the beginning did you, when you first started getting into a major syndication like that? How many characters did you have in the comic strip?
Well, I had about maybe 6 to start with, but then I began introducing new ones about every 6 months or a year or so, and sort of building it up and getting renewed interest in it, by having new characters. But they were all based on real people. Of course, Miss Buxley was based on Marilyn Monroe, and I had a roommate one time who was just a sex-crazed guy. He never wanted to do anything. If he had got any time off, I'd say, let's go to the movies. He says, no, I got to go get a girl. I said, well, let's go out to have dinner. He said, no, I'm going to go get a girl. I said, well, how do you get girls in town? They said, you just walk down the street and see a girl coming. You say, hey, baby, you want to get together? Yeah. And I think he was a little bit more obscene than that.
Damn.
I said, don't you ever get slapped? He says, yeah, but 1 out of 10 I make out.
That's good odds.
Going with the odds.
Anyway, Beetle was patterned after him.
Well, Mort, let me ask you something. And I got to know this. I've always wondered this. What comes first, man? The picture or the words?
Well, what I try to do is think of a funny picture, and then figure out how to get there. I like to do funny pictures because you don't have to worry about translations. Beetle appears in 52 different countries. It's got 200 million readers every day, and a lot of puns and plays on words don't translate. So I try to have a funny picture as often as I can. But I have a guy I play golf with that gives me trigger phrases. And it's just things like, where have you been? Or, I tried that a lot of times. It never worked. Or just any kind of a statement like that. It just gets me started thinking, and I try to think of a funny way to end it. And I get a lot of ideas that way. But mainly, I think if I can think of a funny picture, that works the best.
What's your perfect work environment? Your surroundings? What really gets the creativity going for you, Morton?
Well, I tell you, we just had a big storm up here, and we lost our lights and our heat and everything. No toilets or anything. And the people kept offering us places to go, and I wanted to stay here and see if I could do something about the house. I didn't want to be here when we got our power back. Anyway, I lit the gas fireplace that we have, and I got a flashlight. I went and sat in the fireplace and thought of ideas. I thought, well, that's one thing I could do. I can't draw because I can't see well enough, but I can think. In 1 week, I got 300 gags.
That lasts you a while.
Almost a year's worth, So, I don't know. I just think funny. I go into the grocery store and I just make jokes all the time. And I'm in there with my wife, and she goes off shopping somewhere, and I kind of lose her, and I'm looking around. The manager comes out and says, "What are you looking for? Can I help you?" I says, "Yeah, I'm looking for my wife." "What aisle do you keep wives in?"
Have you ever hit a brick wall, man? You ever just sat there and try to come up with an idea and just nothing?
Not really, no. I can always come up. I crack jokes all day long on the street. I keep my wife laughing, and as I say, the grocery store, and then go to the dentist, and the girl's cleaning my teeth. She says, "Open wide, open wide, open wide, open wide." And after about 15 minutes of that, she says, "Okay, I'm all done." I said, "Say it again." She says, "What?" Say what? I said, "Say open wide." She said, "Why?" I says, "Because when I get home, everybody tells me to shut up."
Has there ever been any Beetle Bailey strips that have got you into trouble or caused any kind of controversy?
I had lots of. Well, for instance, when I started my black character, Lieutenant Jack Flap, he walks into the office and he says to Sarge, "How come there are no blacks in this honky outfit?" I think I lost about 15 papers by introducing a black character. But then I sold a lot of papers too in the Caribbean and places like where they have a larger black community, and they thought it would appeal to them. So that worked out all right, but it took a while. Miss Buxley, I had a lot of trouble with that. The women's movement thought I was a sexist because I had the general messing around with his secretary. And I guess that's a no-no today, but I grew up reading Esquire, where that was the main theme of all the cartoons.
Yeah.
The secretary taking dictation on the boss's lap. That was just a standard scene. And so I didn't quite understand what the women were objecting to, and I lost some papers with it. And I appeared on a talk show one time in Chicago, and I showed up, and I was talking, before we went on, I was talking to the host, and this girl walks in and sits next to me, and just to be friendly, I said, "Hi, how you doing?" And she said, "Okay." I said, "What are you doing?" She says, "I'm here to be on the show." I said, "Oh, really?" She says, "I'm going to get you."
Oh, no.
Oh, boy, did she blast me on the show. I mean, she says, "How come you show the big bulges in the women's shirts and you don't show bulges in the men's pants?"
Well, you say, well, because I'm a guy.
Yeah. I said, "Who wants to see that?"
Hey, Mort, has anyone ever approached you about doing maybe a Beetle Bailey motion picture?
Oh, yeah, I've had a number of them, but they'll never let me write it. And just, I tell you, some of the scripts I've got have just been awful. I had one where Beetle was looking for a place to loaf, and he sees an airplane there with the door open. So he goes and gets in there and conks out. And the guys come out with some boxes of food and put it in the plane and fly off. And they go over to Bosnia or someplace like that where they have a rebel fight. And they drop out the food to feed some of the people that were in kind of a combat zone. And Beetle wakes up in the forest and he says, "I'll be darned, what am I doing in this forest?" So he eats wild animals, drinks out of the streams and everything like that. And eventually the rebels catch him and they brainwash him to go back to the United States and kill the president.
That don't sound like Beetle Bailey, I know.
Yeah, and I told the movie company, I said, "That's not Beetle Bailey. If you're going to say Beetle Bailey," and you got it up on the marquee, and people go in to see Beetle Bailey, they see that. I said, "You got him out of the camp. The Sarge doesn't even exist in it." And I said, "That's ridiculous, awful." And same with TV shows. I had a contract with CBS to do a show, and they couldn't get anybody. They didn't approve of any of the scripts from Connie. Says, "Let me write it." So they said, "Okay." So I wrote it. They accepted it. And then they sent me a copy of it, and it said, "Beetle Bailey, written by Hank Surant." I said, "Who the heck is Hank Surant?"
That don't sound like Mort Walker.
No. I called them up and objected, and they said, "Oh, he's been doing a lot of work for us. We thought we'd give him credit for something." I said, "We don't give him credit for this, because I wrote it. I did a lot of the drawings on it." So they said, "Okay." So it finally came out, Beetle Bailey, written by Hank Surant, and the screen goes blank. It says, also written by Mort Walker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think so, right?
Well, anyway, just to make a long story short, I just had one contract after another where they won't let me write it. I'm not a member of the Screen Actors Guild. And they said, "Oh, we got people who can write it just as good or better than you." We put out 50 Beetle Bailey shows, 5-minute shows, and they wouldn't let me write any of them. And I don't think they were very successful. You probably never even heard of them.
No, I haven't.
50 films. And I had nothing to do with it. They just wouldn't let me do anything. I don't know if I'm a writer and make the script successful. You would think, well, maybe you can make a movie successful. You know?
Absolutely. Do you think the advent of the internet or the current economy is affecting comic strip artists in any way?
Oh yeah. It's not just the economy. It's just the change of venues. You know, everybody, all my grandchildren carry around their little iPads, and they're playing games and getting entertainment from that. They don't even read the paper, and it's kind of scary because everything that I know that I like is disappearing. I got my old IBM typewriter gathering dust over in the corner.
Mort, what's something nobody knows about you? You got any hidden talents beside obviously drawing? I mean, is there anything that you do that nobody? It's like a hidden talent that you got.
Well, I keep coming up with ideas that would actually improve the world. I just got a copyright on one of my latest inventions, and we'll see whether or not that sells. I've written a lot of books, different kinds of books. I wrote a health philosophy book called Mind Control. Matter of fact, people keep calling and said they want a copy. I just sent a copy off to somebody in Tulsa. I've written a lot of children's books. I just got a royalty check from one of them yesterday. So I wrote a Broadway show.
You're just all over the place, aren't you?
My mind just works constantly.
It sounds like it.
Mainly what I think is things that would improve society. And I was out in my yard the other day, and I saw in front of our guest cottage, I planted some pachysandra. I said, "Oh, that really looks good." I never do anything. I don't have to mow that. I don't have to weed it or anything. And it stays green all year long. I said, if they did that on the center stripe on the Merritt Parkway here, they wouldn't have to mow it. And that means that you wouldn't have to have traffic tie-ups when the trucks are out there mowing and working on the lawn. I said, they plant it once, and that's it. So I'm writing a letter to the highway department, tell them, get some pachysandra.
When you're not working on your comics, what do you do for fun? What's your hobbies?
Well, I love golf, and I used to play 3 times a week, and I got my good game going, and I won tournaments all over the country, Pebble Beach, Disney World, and various big places like that. I've got a whole raft of trophies here.
Wow, Mort! When you told me you played golf, I didn't know you was that good.
Well,
you had me fooled there for a second. I thought you was just a once a week player, just going out to have a good time. But you're actually about like a pro, huh?
Well, I only win amateur tournaments. I don't get in with it. I occasionally shoot in the 60s, but not anymore. But mainly the low 70s, and I was a pretty good golfer. I don't know what happened to me. All of a sudden, I can't hit the ball. It just drives me crazy. But my partners, when I'm out there playing, I always say, "Is that all the farther it went?" they think that's a joke because I say it all the time. Is that all the farther it went?
Hey, Barton, I'm
when
sorry.
when you're almost 90, I guess a lot of the steam goes out of you.
I got to tell you this little story real quick before we start wrapping this up.
uh,
We got a buddy who is working on our website, and his name is Barton McGee, and he's out of Chicago. And we let him know that, hey, we're going to be doing an interview with Mort Walker. And he got real excited. And he's a caricature artist. He does caricatures and stuff like that. And and I told him, and I hope you don't mind, that you might maybe would say hello to Barton. His name's Barton McGee.
Hello, Barton.
He'll get a big kick out of that, because you're like a legend you're a legend to all caricature artists and stuff like that, comics, any kind of artist actually.
I forgot one thing I thought was kind of interesting in that the Army sent me to college to study engineering, and I got into an architectural course. My father was an architect, and I used to work for him, so I really excelled at that. And I've done a lot of architecture in my house here. And in Florida, I built a cartoon museum, a 52,000 square foot building that I designed and went on the site every day to help build it, everything like that. So it's another one of my talents that I thought was interesting.
Oh, it is. Well, outside of your family, what do you consider your crowning achievement so far in your lifetime is?
I think reaching my goal is probably what I like more than anything. Is that I had so many different jobs. I was a magazine editor for a while. Edited four magazines by myself. I didn't have a secretary or a staff or anything. And of course, I was the greeting card designer, and a number of other jobs I had like that. But to actually get my goal, which is a pretty tough thing to do, and I don't know how I ever achieved it. I wanted to make some money. The last time King Features gave me a contract, the contract was a work for hire contract, where they said they created the strip and they own it, and when I die, the property is theirs. And I said, I'm not going to sign that. It's a lie. And I said, I created this strip. I had the character in the Saturday Evening Post before I ever brought it to you. I said, I'm not going to turn the strip over. My children are going to have the strip. My three sons work with me on it now. They worked for me for 30, 40 years. I'm going to take it away from them. So I wouldn't sign it. And I worked for a year without a contract until they were worried that I was going to go somewhere else. They said, okay, what do you want? I said, $1 million. They said, okay. So I think that's probably the biggest accomplishment of my life.
Now, I don't want, I almost left something out. Is your son helping you out right now doing your comics?
My sons?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have three sons that work with me.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity maybe I didn't want to leave them out because I know that they're helping you out now, and I know you're really proud of them.
Well, I let my son Greg, who's my oldest boy, started working with me first. He helps me draw it. I do all the pencil work, all laid out just the way I want it, and he inks it. He goes over my lines with ink so that it can be republished. My son Brian joined me later, and he and Greg took over High and Lois, which is another one of the strips. I've created 9 strips, and 4 of them are still going. And they write that, and someone else draws it. And then my son Neil works here in the office, and he does most of my European comics. They can't translate enough of my stuff so that they can fill up a comic book, but I just did my 900th comic book over there. And wow. Neil does a lot of the drawing for it.
Well, Morton, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We really appreciate you coming on our show. You've really made our day, and I hope you enjoyed your time with us.
Yes, I have.
25th Hour Radio Show.